Welcome to Beyond the Coverage. I'm Chris Horner. In today's episode, the first rest day of the 2025 Giro d'Italia, I want to talk about the highs and lows of Grand Tour racing and how it can change so dramatically. And we'll use VISMA bike as an example of the first 3 days of racing here in Albania and now going over to Italy when they start stage 4 for the first sprinter stage. Well, first off, if we look at VISMA bike from stage 1, Wout van Aert was pretty motivated on stage 1, and he made it over those couple of 3 category climbs, the matching ones, on the final of the stage, and then he went second on the stage. When we see his interview, you'd see him coughing a little bit, and we know he was sick before the Giro d'Italia. Normally that cough could certainly be related to the sickness that he had before the Giro started, but with a big effort of doing the sprint, and then later in the individual time trial where we saw him go really bad, but again in his interview coughing afterwards, that can certainly be related to the lungs being a little bit upset from the sprint. It can be related, of course, from the individual time trial, but once that cough, if it disappears quickly after the finish of the stage, that normally means that he's still not sick, but there could be some irritation in the lungs left over from being sick. So we see those first 3 stages from VISMA bike not being so spectacular, right? Stage 1, second, a little bit of motivation there. Individual time trial from Wout van Aert went bad. Simon Yates, he lost around 35, 40 seconds, but he was ahead of his brother Adam Yates, so there's a little bit of positivity there, but not much positivity for VISMA bike. Then we go into stage 3, and we see Wout van Aert, the big guy, get dropped, and Olaf Koy, their pure sprinter here for VISMA bike, get dropped early on that stage. We go into the finish of the stage, under 10 kilometers to go with just about 8K to go. We see VISMA bike had 3 riders at the back, Simon Yates, Wilco Kelderman, and Steven Kruijswijk at the back of that group and no other teammates around them. And those guys are not even at the front fighting for position, where we see Primoz Roglic at the front of the peloton, especially when it narrowed up with under 4 kilometers to go alongside their Lidl Trek on the right side of Primoz Roglic and his Bora Hansgrohe riders on the front. That's where VISMA bike should have been. And if you fast forward into stage 3 for the sprint, VISMA bike's MIA for the sprint on stage 3 because, as I told you, Wout has disappeared on the first big climb there of the stage, and then, well, the only big climb. And then, of course, they lost Olaf Koy before they did Wout van Aert on that stage. So when we start looking at a Grand Tour race, the highs and lows, well, this is where we could see something change dramatically now that we go into stage 4. But there's still some ifs, ands, and buts all over the place with VISMA bike. Will Wout van Aert come good again from being sick the week before the Giro started? Olaf Koy, if we back it all the way up to get well again, Olaf Koy had magnificent form, or at least it looked like magnificent form when he was following the tacks as they come down off the farm roads, and it had that left bend and they were on the gravel stuff there, and then we see him crash and he broke his collarbone there. So this is the first race back here at the Giro d'Italia. So Olaf Koy's form could still be coming back up. We don't really know if it means anything to see him get dropped on stage 1 and stage 3 because they are climbs, and Olaf Koy would have gotten dropped on those climbs regardless. So he could still be coming good. He might be 100% good. We don't know that. But the reason why I'm bringing it up is if Olaf Koy comes good for stage 4, all of a sudden that chemistry within VISMA bike will start to change dramatically. Where I said they were MIA on yesterday's butterfly effect for stage 3, now all of a sudden at stage 4, we could see VISMA bike win stage 4. And that will change the chemistry in all directions for VISMA bike because, of course, we don't even know exactly where Simon Yates' form is. He had a bit of a rough beginning of the season when he got hit by a car at training camp. Then, of course, we saw him have some issues later in the season, and he was coming back at Trino Adriatico where he was top 15. Then he went to Catalonia, went top 10 at Catalonia. Now he's getting better and better as he's coming here into the Giro d'Italia. You can imagine his form's coming up. But, of course, after the individual time trial, we didn't see a spectacular TT there out of Simon Yates. So it's hard to know exactly where his form is. So let's say we go into stage 4. And remember, when we look at stage 4, it's going to be Wout van Aert leading out Olaf Koy. So if Olaf Koy does have good form, if Wout van Aert's form comes just a hair better after he's had a rest day now, That's the upside of the early rest day here at the Giro d'Italia, is riders like Wout van Aert will be able to get a chance to recover, and riders that have crashed like Jay Vine on stage 1 when he crashed just about 5 kilometers ago from the finish line there, he gets a chance to recover too. So Wout van Aert's form comes up, Olaf Koy's form's already there. Now you have Wout van Aert leading out Olaf Koy. We should see Eduardo Affini in front of Wout van Aert, and then Wout van Aert doing the final lead out for Olaf Koy. This sprint on stage 4 is going to be nothing like what we witnessed on stage 1 and especially stage 3. When I rewind you into the finish there of stage 3 and we see Ciccone reaching the front at about 2.5 kilometers on that super narrow section of road, and Ciccone controls the peloton. Okay, he has a little bit of help because all the sprinter teams are gone, which is what I want to get to, but on top of that he has some help because it's super narrow, and then he can follow that narrow all the way going through the roundabout and comes out with about 1.1 kilometers to go. And then we see Vasek get on the front, the last lead out man for Mads Pedersen. He gets on the front at just under 800 meters to go. And Vasek's not even hitting out 100% at this moment because Vasek knows he really needs to get on the accelerator from 300, 400 out so that he can go all the way into 200 meters with top speed and drop off when Mads Pedersen at 200 meters to go at top speed. He's not going to have that luxury of going into stage 4 with Ciccone riding the K and a half on the front, and then Vasek getting on with just under 800 meters to go, riding soft for 200 meters, and then riding full from 400 all the way into 200 meters to go to drop off Mads Pedersen. That will not happen on stage 4 because all the sprinter teams are going to be here with full force. So where we saw Sam Bennett get dropped and we saw his teammate Dorian Godon get dropped, that won't happen again on stage 4. So a rider like Dorian Godon from AG2R will have Vendrame leading him out, and then he will be leading out Sam Bennett, assuming Sam Bennett's got some form. I'm not going to predict if Sam Bennett has form or not, because I don't even know if Sam Bennett can predict when he's on form. But if he is on form, that rider can do something spectacular, because we know when we look back at the Tour de France when he was wearing the race leader's green jersey and beating Peter Sagan that year, we know Sam Bennett has the form to win bike races. Does he have it here at the Giro d'Italia? I don't know. But for sure, if he's trying to win the stage, and you have Vendrame doing the lead out for Dorian and Dorian doing the lead out for Sam Bennett, the speed's going to be fast. So then Vasek does not get that same kind of love that he had of having the luxury of just backing off the throttle and then throttling it up with 200 meters to go. They're going to be fighting and scrambling and bumping shoulders left and right when we come into stage 4, where we have yet to see that at this year's Giro d'Italia. And that is especially why we haven't seen the big crashes at the Giro d'Italia, because stage 1 had, of course, the 2 category 3 climbs coming at the finish of the stage to split it up. Stage 2 individual time trial, of course, that's, obvious. Well, Luke Plapp had some issues in the stage 2 individual time trial. But other than that, we go into stage 3, same thing with the mountain climbs. It blows up the peloton. We have less difficulties coming down that narrow section under 4 kilometers to go, where honestly, that narrow section should not have been in the race when we're talking about 4 kilometers to go all the way to 1.1 kilometer to go when they come out of that roundabout. That was a dangerous section where if the peloton had gone slower up over the climb and you had more sprinter teams, it'd have been a nightmare. So when we start looking at VISMA Lease Bike and you realize that Wout van Aert didn't go good on stage 3 or the individual time trial, and then Olaf Koy has been out of the picture, things are going to start to change, and we can see VISMA Lease Bike start to come back up. They haven't lost anything so far, is basically what I'm getting at, because stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 were not super important, but when you start going into stage 4 now, all of a sudden, that flip of the switch can come back, and we can see VISMA Lease Bike with Olaf Koy, Wout van Aert, Eduardo Affini doing the lead out. They might be able to take over that front part of the peloton that Lidl Trek was been controlling on stage 1 and 3. Now, Lidl Trek's not completely out of the picture, right? Because it won't be Ciccone doing the lead out under 2 kilometers or 1.5 kilometers to go on stage 4, but they'll flip the team around. Where we saw that it was Patrick Conrad, it was Verona, and it was Ciccone doing the final lead out there before Vasek kicked in for Mads Pedersen. Now those 3 riders will not be there at the end of the race, but doing the lead out anyways, they'll be there at the end, but not be there at doing the lead out. But then you flip it around and you'll have Dan Uhl doing the lead out from 2.5 kilometer to go, and you'll see Jacopo Mosca up there doing something late in the race for sure to try to help the lead out of Mads Pedersen and Vasek get to the finish. So you'll see Lidl Trek, they'll flip around their guys to go in a different order than what we saw in stages 1 and 3. But can they control the front of the peloton? I can't tell you that, because once we start adding a bunch of other sprinters into the mix and their teammates coming back in for stage 4, I cannot assure you of which team will be controlling the peloton, because we don't exactly know where Wout van Aert's form is. We know for sure that with other teams coming in the picture, especially when we're talking about Soudal Quick-Step, where they have some sprint riders there with Paul Magnaire, Luc Lamperti's in there, and of course they have Ethan Hayter that could do the lead outs there too. So we'll see Soudal Quick-Step much more in the picture on stage 4. And then when we're talking about other teams, let's go into Alpecin de Koenig, because how can I forget them? With Caden Groves, you know he has a chance of winning a Grand Tour stage here at the Giro d'Italia for sure. And he's got the teammates to back him up. Now that the mountains have started to dissipate and we got a flat stage here for stage 4, you know Alpecin de Koenig are going to be in the riders meeting before stage 4 starts proper, saying that we're putting Jimmy Johnson on the front because we want a field sprint here. And when we get deep into stage 4, you got to believe that with Quinten Hermans and with Van den Bosch was the rider from Alpecin de Koenig that was trying to get his teammate Quinten Hermans up to the front at 500 meters to go in yesterday's stage 3 here at the Giro d'Italia. So we know Van den Bosch could be there at the finish of the stage. Quinten Hermans certainly has that kind of power. Edward Plankarts is a marvelous lead-out man. So Caden Groves should have the opportunity of putting himself in and around the position to be able to win stage 4 of the Giro d'Italia. He's going to have to overcome, of course, VISMA Lease bikes and Lidl Trek train there, but certainly we cannot leave them out. Now let's go over to Q36.5, because we saw Tom Pidcock doing the sprints on both stages 1 and 3, but now once we go into stage 4, Tom Pidcock, if I take you all the way back to the Lula Tour where he won the general classification plus individual stages, well, it was Machete that won a stage there at Lula Tour 2, where we saw Tom Pidcock hitting the front at about 3 kilometers to go, where he was drilling it for Q36.5 while wearing the race leader's jersey there at the Lula Tour. And then it was Machete that won that stage. So when we start looking over at Q36.5, Tom Pidcock's role will change, assuming that he's not too interested in the general classification, where we'll see Tom Pidcock capable of helping to do some lead outs and put his sprinters in good position, because they have Ems Lupins there on the team that will do a magnificent lead out for Machete. And both Machete and Lupins were teammates on what team? Lidl Trek. So they, of course, have lead-out specialty training already, and they are, of course, sprinters that have won races in their own right, especially when we're talking Machete, because Machete's got a lot of victories on his wins, but more of his victories are a little bit less and below here at the Giro d'Italia. But I think Machete's form has come up here at later years while he's riding for Q36.5, and he'll have more freedom here, where we'll see Tom Pidcock, Ems Lupins, and Machete going for stage victory here at stage 4. Could be something to keep an eye on for sure. Now, when we look at other riders like Movistar's or Lewis, that of course, he's not going to have any more help because they really don't have much help over there at Movistar. But maybe he'll have somebody that'll help put him in some kind of position to get near the finish. But the one rider I do want to talk about, Corbin Strong, he's going to have more teammates to put him hopefully in front of Mads Pedersen before 200 meters to go, so that he has a better shot at winning the stage. When we start looking over at Hugo Uhl, his teammate, Hugo Uhl certainly will play some kind of part at the finish of these sprint stages for sure. So we should see a big-time excitement change here at the Giro d'Italia, where, of course, we saw the hills break up the sprint stages, so there's not curb-to-curb action, and the sprints were a little bit lower and slower. Now, all of a sudden, we go into stage 4, it's going to be something more like we're used to seeing over at Tour de France sprint stage victories, where it's going to be more nervous and anything can happen. Well, with that anything can happen, that means, of course, we could lose some riders to crashes on stage 4. But right now, throughout the first 3 stages of the Giro, we've been lucky enough, with the exception of Mikel Landa crashing with that 5 kilometers to go, of only losing 2 riders. Mikel Landa out with a fracture to his back, and then, of course, Jeffrey Brochard that went down in that same crash, but the later group that came up to that crash, where Jeffrey Brochard from AG2R went down off the side of the road and dropped down that 4 feet drop too. So far, it's been what I would call a calm start to the beginning week of a Grand Tour. But for VISMA Lease bike, They got the ability to change it right now because it hasn't gone so bad that they can't fix anything that's happened so far, with the exception of the pink jerseys out of reach for Wout van Aert and Olaf Koy. But could still be in reach for Simon Yates. So that's even fixable for Visma Lease Bike at this point in time if the team was to come much better here from stage 4 and further at the Giro d'Italia. Like and subscribe. I'll see you guys for the butterfly effect for stage 4, where we should see some elbow and shoulder rubbing all the way throughout the finish of tomorrow's stage 4 for a sprint stage victory. Like and subscribe. I'll see you guys on the next edition real soon.